It's a note on the bulletin board that said they wanted people to work on the railroad.
I came out of school during the Depression, and jobs were non-existent. And I got a chance to go on the railroad. That's where I worked the rest of my life.
When I was going to school, I used to be up the third story of the high school study room, and I could look down and see the Milwaukee local coming into town there. So look at it, they had a valley or a sea engine they used there. And so I got interested in railroad because I like steam locomotives.
My father worked for the railroad. My grandfather worked for the railroad as an engineer. Dad wanted to teach me something, you know, during the Depression, you had to learn something, so he taught me how to telegraph when I was 12.
I'll tell you, another fellow that worked at Cedar Falls, his name was Hawley, H-O-L-L-Y, Bill Hawley, and he come out of the relay office. He used to come out for the summer work. When I was learning telegraphing, you know, well, it's just like anything else. You got to take patience, you know. And he used to say, well, you know, I've got all day to get this to you, and you got all day to learn it. And he just, boy, he had the patience of Job when it comes for teaching me how to do it. At that time, I think the job at Cedar Falls paid $5 or $6 a day. And some of these other jobs was only paying about $4. And $1 was a lot of money then.
They'd usually run a work train out of Tacoma Monday morning, and then we'd spend the week up on the pass, ditching, spreading ties and rail and things. I especially liked work trains with Cecil Geelhart. He was a good teacher. If he thought you were interested in something, then he'd take time to explain. I learned a lot of things about rail, different grades of rail.
Yeah, I used to drive on spikes onto oak ties. Up here in the mountains here, they use oak ties around the curves, you know, and fir ties on them, straightaways. There wasn't hardly any straightaways up here in the mountains. So it was always oak ties. And they were, you know, son of a gun to drive a spike into.
Well, a brakeman is, how would you say, is a switchman, a lot of things. Assist the conductor, making up the train, switching the industries, making minor repairs underway. I was actually promoted in 1964. There was two of us took the examination at Tacoma. The rules examiner was a man named Hicks. He was a former superintendent, division superintendent, and he held the rules examination or class and examination in a motel. He asked us a few questions about rules, and then he got into hypothetical things. He'd set up a situation, what do you do now? And how would you handle this situation? He knew the territory pretty well, the Everett line, the T and E and things like that. And he would, you're an extra west and so forth. And finally, long in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, I guess, he said, well, said you guys did okay. He says, here's your examination card. He signed it. Away we went.
I came to Cedar Falls in 1958 as station agent and remained it there from 1958 to about 1980 when the railroad folded. Your duties as an agent was simply you were in charge of that station. You lined up the work for the operators and clerks that worked for you there. And you had your bookkeeping to do, your station reports, your monthly reports. As case this job, I worked as the day agent there, so I had to telegraph and run the teletype machines and copy train orders and stuff like that.
When the train would stop at the depot, it was only a little ways up to where we were living, and sometimes the passengers would give us an orange or some candy or something. And because we had no place to play except right there by the tracks. That was in Cedar Falls. Then my father was promoted to being the agent at North Bend. And we moved there in 1911. Well, they took what little furniture we had on the freight train, and we rode in the caboose over to North Bend.
I can remember my dad writing those flimsies, they call them, trade orders, and he never took the pencil off of paper. When he wrote letters to people, he'd write the same way. His letters were all joined. They also had a semaphore. You have to climb the steel ladder up. My dad used to have to trim the wicks and put the kerosene in for the light. They had big levers came down into the depot and moved the semaphore. The blades on the semaphore.
I was proud of my father, and I didn't realize how much we had. And of course, we rode on the train for nothing.
Did you go to Seattle at all?
Oh, yes. My mother went once a week. She'd take turns taking a couple of us. And I think we liked to do it, but we used to get sick, though, riding on that motor car. The ride took us about an hour. Well, I have a letter that I wrote when I was 7 years old that I typed at the depot because he had a typewriter. One of the things that I enjoyed was when they had national elections, like electing the president. I remember going with my father at night for him to get the report. It would be the first report that came to the depot who was elected. I remember Woodrow Wilson being elected.
Dad went to Cedar Falls and we were there a very short time. He was a section foreman. My dad worked all the time during the Depression. About 1937, they remodeled the depot into a home, and that's where we got to live then. They had a passenger train that went by North Bend, that went down to Monroe and in Snoqualmie, but the main line was out of Cedar Falls. And that's why my dad liked North Bend. He didn't like the pressure that was put on him when he was on the main line. And there was one time, we were married at that time, that North Bend had a huge amount of snowfall.
And the drift was about 14 feet high, and the engineer said, oh, this big old locomotive will go right through that drift. So he got backed up a long ways, and then he give her all the power he had. When he hit that drift, it just crawled up on top of that drift, and there he was, stuck tighter than a drum.
They had a lot of slides. That was the years before they had some sheds to stop the snow from coming over the track. I know that the old telephone would ring and there was a derailment or anything, he would have to get up in the middle of the night and go take care of it. And sometimes he would be called to go up to the branch line and help at the main line because there had been an accident.
Started out that day at Enumclaw, going to Everett, and I think it was on a Saturday. And we had to wait for some cattle, I think, going to Carnation. And so they laid us up for, I don't know, 4 hours, 5 hours. We got those and went all the way to Everett. And then they decided to come all the way back to Enumclaw, 16 hours. Well, we had